Good day, my friends. Welcome to Carpo's channel. I'm Carpo, your host. Hope everybody's doing well today. I had a few things I wanted to talk about this afternoon. Well, afternoon, evening, wherever it may be, wherever you may be. I was going to talk a little bit about how much space travel matters to us, a little bit about the idea of simulation and a simulated universe, and even a little bit about the flat Earth. I wasn't sure how I was going to tackle this subject. I had some notes and ideas of things I wanted to mention, but generally there's a variety of topics that I would like to address relating to the mysterious unknown, if you will. I've always found space fascinating. I thought before I did this, I would say today's episode is brought to you by junk mail. I just found this in the mail yesterday, and I just wanted to share it because it's just what's wrong with so much of society right now. This is a you are a finalist in our 2019 Toyota Camry hybrid giveaway. So what you do is there's this little thing, you pull this little strip out, and these numbers light up. And then you scratch off the little thing below. And if the numbers match, then you win one of these prizes. Well, guess what? Of course they match. They all match. We know this. But the fact that people are still treated like complete idiots, shows that there are a lot of complete idiots still out there. If you read the fine print, of course, you have to attend one of their seminars. It's basically the same thing as like a timeshare presentation where they try to talk you into buying a bunch of crap you don't need. But what really got me wasn't that it's junk mail, was the fact that they actually included this little box on here that is a piece of junk plastic. You can see that the numbers that light up is really just an LED in the back that shines through this, black with the numbers cut out. It's absurd to me that people still believe this shit's real, but more than that, it's absurd to me that they're willing to put a battery and a light inside of this thing that they're mailing out to thousands, if not tens of thousands of customers. So, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I have a major issue with junk mail, but more with the way that we're just wasting resources just to get people to buy your shit. I read something the other day that the average American buys 66 garments a year, or like 65 garments a year, clothing items. And I thought that sounds just, ridiculously high. Well, that's about a little more than one a week. For some people, that's normal. Some people do a lot of shopping. And so I thought, well, who am I to say? Well, we throw away, billions of tons of clothing trash every year. So it's just so wasteful. I'm a Goodwill shopper, but I still have most of my clothes. I rarely give any up. Even if they've got some holes in them, I'm willing to wear them. I know it's not a huge issue when it comes to, saving the planet as far as wearing your shirts for a long time. It's just one of those things, though. It's not about how many we buy. It's about the commercialization, the fact that people believe they have to be up to date or have the latest trends and fashions. To me, that's always been absurd. I just don't get it. I don't understand the idea of wearing not just clothes that are fashionable, but specifically wearing them so the label can be out. It's kind of like people who get a new tramp stamp or a tattoo on their back or their shoulder, so it's the middle of winter and it's snowing and they're wearing like a tank top so they can show off their tattoo, and they're freezing their ass off, totally miserable, but everybody can see their tattoo. Well, that's one thing. It's a tattoo. You chose it. You're proud of it. It's different when you're wanting to show a label, which is nothing more than a clothing company that somebody else created. Not even sponsoring a company that you like or a band or something, but the actual company who makes the clothes. I never understood that, but so enough of that aspect of it. I just wanted to kind of get junk mail and that kind of BS out of the way. I think that we all live more comfortable lives when we expose kind of the bullshit out there in the world. And it's important. Sometimes I feel like maybe I'm just kind of ruining the fun in a way when I expose certain things that I think are just totally bullshit, like the new age ideas that I've been kind of pushing on lately. But then earlier, a random video came on. It was James Randi, and I love that guy. And I kind of rewatched the documentary he did, a couple decades ago. And it was how he exposed Uri Geller, the guy who claimed to bend spoons, And his kind of life mission has been to like expose fake psychics and frauds. And I thought, he said, I'm hated by a lot of people. And it's because I tell them what they don't want to hear. And that's something I can totally understand. But he went on to explain why that's so important, which is something I completely agree with. Because people are getting taken for everything that they have out of desperation. It's the same reason I keep talking about, tithe in the church, where, tithe is like 10% of your income is given to the church. They even expect it out of people who really can't even make ends meet, who can't pay their own bills, who can't keep up on their own lives. And they sink further into debt just to give more money to the church. To me, that's, kind of defrauding people in a way, in my opinion. But, to each his own. Many people would say, hey, if somebody's an idiot and they want to give up their money to, a sucker's born every minute, or, for every dollar there will be somebody there to take it. There's a million quotes that you could refer to show that a fool and his money will soon be parted, or soon part ways. It's true. It's absolutely true. Fools waste money, but I guess why should I care? I'm not a fool. I don't buy into these things. I don't buy into commercialization. I don't give money to psychics to tell me about fake ass, readings and cold readings about relatives that they're not speaking to. But if I don't fall for it, then why do I care? I care because I care about you guys. All of you. People. Just people in general. The other people who may be a little bit, more likely to fall for something out of maybe a desperate moment in life. I've had some times in life that were tough for me, and I was willing to believe some pretty crazy theories. And after closer inspection, I find that, okay, I'm wrong, and that's okay. We're living in a time where we expect too much of ourselves. For 99.9% of history, we were morons that just hunted and gathered and drew paintings in caves and made arrowheads. You think about it, we didn't, regardless of how smart our ancestors were, they obviously weren't intelligent enough to even build themselves shelters sometimes, So once we developed this ability to, wow, we have more meat, we're able to build bigger brains, build better shelters, live better lives, so genetically we can grow to become humans, curious, have this innate curiosity about life as we do now. That period of that intelligence has been very small. And so we are likely to kind of fall into these primal beliefs or whatever our ancestors may have considered religious, And it's not just beliefs in religion, it's beliefs in whatever a person is saying that seems convincing enough. So, I was looking at this, I was watching something the other day about wormholes, and I was telling my son, I was like, I said, for all I know, I don't believe wormholes exist until they've been proven. Even on a minute scale, it doesn't really matter. The idea of a sci-fi wormhole, can you ever travel through it? I have a point to this, because I was thinking about how, even though I do attack kind of the alternate realm, or this, the people who make mystical claims, I also understand that science is completely biased and dogmatic in many angles, in many facets of it. And so, things like wormholes, can we travel, through time and space to another place? Maybe, maybe not. But the idea that science is so hung up on these things, it shows the same desperation to understand the universe in a mystical way as religion does. So to give you an example, it was like 20 years ago now that I learned about string theory, and I was so fascinated. I remember it was like 98, and we were watching this show. We were living in this farmhouse at the time, and I was like, yeah, we're watching this Discovery Channel show about the idea of this string theory. And as the next decade and a half passed, I found that even there were 6 or 7 different string theories that actually all pointed to the same equation being correct. And so all of these scientists were saying, oh, string theory must be correct. But it all fell apart. Why did it fall apart? Everything falls apart under scrutiny if you can't scrutinize it. And the fact that we can't look beyond atoms and, their respective, protons, neutrons, electrons, we've got the particles, we can kind of understand the idea of uncertainty and how, the old model of an electron spinning around a nucleus is complete bullshit, that it's, a field of possibilities, and a wave particle, duality, the double slit experiment. Science is so confused in trying to understand these things. Meanwhile, the kind of alternative field, they really grasp onto these things and say, oh, look, this proves that we're right, and we're right. Really, we're all idiots together. We don't understand the fundamentals of why things exist, why atoms come together, why matter forms at all, and I don't think that any matter of talking about the Big Bang or creation is really going to solve the problem of why things exist or where they came from. There's like, we come up with these, the Fermi paradox is this paradox that says if there's aliens out there, then where are they? And it's like facepalm to me. I think, well, of course there must be some other life out there in the universe. Most likely. Can't prove or disprove. But where are the aliens? Well, this comes down to the Drake equation, which is basically says that, in a nutshell, any advanced species who gets to a certain point will either kill themselves, destroy themselves, or will be killed by natural forces. And even if we do evolve in a comfortable environment and we're able to create amazing machines to travel time and space, how long will our species exist, and how far will we actually be able to travel? What is the extent of our capabilities as beings? In other words, I'm not surprised there's no aliens there. And I won't get into the details on what I believe about that, because I do believe that UFOs exist, and if they, and throughout history, I don't understand or know what they are. I don't know about beings visiting us from afar, but I'd be more likely to believe that beings are living here right on the Earth in the deepest recesses of the planet, where it's safe, and safe from humans anyway. But I just don't know. I understand the desire to know, the mystery. And that's why it's funny to me when scientists, and I guess the example I was going to give was Neil deGrasse Tyson, who, he's a really intelligent guy. He's got a lot of great things to say, but he's more of a sci-fi kind of celebrity than an actual, or should I say a scientist celebrity, than an actual scientist, in my opinion. He obviously loves the ego boost he gets. And this is what you see from a lot of people who become famous and popular. Even if they're legitimate scientists, they kind of fall into these like ludicrous ideas of, well, I'm right and you're wrong. And one of the things that he said was, and I saw him say this the other day, he said that he believes that there is a 50-50 chance that we're living in a simulation right now. And if you're not aware of simulation theory already, then I can't really explain the whole thing here. It just says that any species that evolves far enough will create a simulation of itself, and that it's most likely that we live in a simulation. Elon Musk has also posed this, and to me, it just sounds like the rantings of crazy bullshit to me. No math equations can tell me that, can really explain what that means. Like, what do you mean a simulation? Does it mean that you're a simulation in a mind or in a computer? Or does matter really exist? Is it a simulation in a space? And does that help to explain what goes on beyond this simulation? These are just bigger questions that don't bring any answers, resolutions. But for a guy like that, who has that much, that many people who support him, to say, I believe it's a 50-50 chance we're in a simulation, that doesn't do any good. It doesn't help anybody understand anything. That's my opinion. So I understand why people think that Tyson is a complete moron, because of the way he conducts himself. But it doesn't mean that he's wrong. A lot of these scientists are frustrated because there's so much BS out there. So many people want to say, well, science is wrong, but we're going to use the word quantum and we're going to use particle theory to explain our point. And so we're right, but only the parts that we want. It's confirmation bias. So when we're talking about space, you ask the question of, I was thinking, is it worth traveling to Mars? And I've heard the argument so many times that, like, man, why are we wasting money on space when we haven't even looked in the depths of our own oceans? And for a long time I thought the same way. And then I realized, well, duh, because we're fucking humans. I mean, the ocean's interesting and all, but of course we're going to yearn for space. We'll all end up at the bottom of the ocean at one time or another. But to get out into space, I mean, this may be the only opportunity for humans to ever use space travel. And to even go out and into space, put satellites into orbit, any of this, if it all falls apart tomorrow, it's going to be very difficult to maintain this system, this structure that we have right now with satellites, GPS, telescopes. We've learned so much in such a short period of time, but it doesn't mean that this is permanent. We're living in a time where it's so precarious. The weather has been good, climate, we've been generally pretty safe from asteroids and, you know, cosmic destruction and huge solar activity for quite a while. But it was only 1859 when the Carrington event caught telegraph wires on fire and shocked operators. If we had that happen today, it would be over. So the point being that yes, we're going to explore space because it's our natural tendency. Humans are dreamers, explorers. We're always seeking the unknown, and so you can't stop that or eliminate it. But we shouldn't want to. It's funny because when I mention that, of course, what comes up is as soon as I start talking about space, there are going to be a small segment of the population who adamantly believes that space doesn't exist and that the Earth is flat. And my brother mentioned this documentary on Netflix, and I thought I'd seen it, but I actually watched it yesterday. It was Behind the Curve. It was a documentary about flat earthers. And it wasn't anything I didn't already know, but you know, it really kind of put the psychological perspective on how desperate many of the flat earthers are to find a community and somewhere to fit in. Many of these people have just felt like they're outcasts. They've had problems in their lives, and they never felt like they fit in anywhere. They finally found a group of people who believed what they did. So it's really not about the subject matter a lot of the time. And I'm not just saying that from, you know, making, you know, out of speculation. They said this. They were interviewed on, you know, the documentary, and they said, yeah, we feel like we're part of a community finally, and we have something. And I think that that's great, but is it dangerous to believe the Earth is flat? Probably not, as an individual. But what it does is it pits an entire group of people against everyone else. All of a sudden, every government is involved in a conspiracy and a cover-up. So for Flat Earth, it's kind of an idea of using our senses over our sense. They're using their sight by saying, well, I can see the Earth looks flat, so therefore it must be flat. And then these models start coming up of how that would operate. Now for me, it's pretty obvious the Earth is a sphere and that the sun is, you know, millions of miles away. Because if it wasn't, then it would become smaller as it passed over the sky. You know, their claim is that the sun travels around in a circle. Well, if that were true, we understand how perspective works. If the sun were really only a couple thousand miles away, then it would get smaller. And it doesn't. So it's more than that. You can feel the warmth of the sun. There's so many obvious factors. So if you're going just by your senses and saying the Earth looks flat, I go by my senses and say, but the sun looks like it's real too. I mean, that's the thing. You can't win the argument. So I'm not here trying to dispute flat Earth or even convince anyone, because the realization is that it's a community issue. It doesn't matter if you have facts and figures. And in today's world, it really doesn't matter on a lot of fronts. People don't want to hear facts. They want to believe what they want to believe. And that's understandable. But, you know, one of the forefront guys of this flat earth movement is this guy named Mark Sargent, I think. And the poor guy, you know, he looks like he's just had a hard time in life. You know, he really wants to be liked. He made T-shirts with himself that said I'm Mark Sargent, you know, and it was some flat Earth shirt, and you know he wore it several times during the documentary. Like, who makes a shirt that says I am this guy, as if yes, it's me? And so many times he would mention people know who I am and they recognize me, and I thought, you know, I hear this so much from, you know, people who really get into what they believe, and then they start getting props, and people say, yeah, good job, man, you're telling me the truth, you're giving me the truth, and they believe it's the truth, and they start to believe it themselves. You know, a lot of people claim to have the truth, but they ignore any facts, and that's confirmation bias. We don't want facts that argue. I even heard one guy on there say that it's forced sun worship, that's the giant grand conspiracy, and I'd say a lot of this is rooted in Christianity, because in the Bible it talks about you know, the disk of the earth and the firmament and the heavens. And so a lot of folks who believe in the flat earth theory don't believe, I shouldn't say it's a theory, it's not a theory. Theories actually have evidence behind them, but this whole idea gets people wrapped up in it, not realizing the Christian roots of it. And it's funny because one point I'd like to say is, you know, a lot of folks who are flat earth community, they say that it's a giant conspiracy, not just by the U.S. government, but by 83 different space agencies and 120 countries that are involved in these types of things. Every scientist around the world is all in cahoots, all the airlines, everybody. But, I mean, it's just such an absurd idea to think that many people are involved. but that it's an idea, when they're asked, they say it's to suppress the truth that the earth is a disk. And the interesting thing is, if you go back to the days of Galileo, when the telescope was discovered, it was brought to the bishop and said, look, this thing can look into space and we can see that it's not what we've been told. It's not a geocentric model of the universe, but rather a heliocentric, and that the universe is much bigger. And a lot of folks don't know that the telescope after that was suppressed for over 100 years, and he was imprisoned. And so there was a giant grand conspiracy around the church to hide the truth. And this is something that's happened several times through history. So it's just so absurd that people who claim to be religious talk about a conspiracy to hide the truth, when in fact it was the very church, that they're supporting that hid the truth for so long. It's time that we grow up. It's fine to want to believe in these things if, until we learn that we're wrong. The question is, what does it take to convince a flat earther that the earth isn't flat? And what I found is it just doesn't exist. They found something they want to believe. It's just as strong as a religious belief. It has nothing to do with science or evidence. It has everything to do with a belief. So, I guess my question is, if a lot of folks say, no, the earth is absolutely flat. And I'd say, well, why don't you go shine a laser between Mount Everest and the Himalayas, Or, sorry, say Mount Everest. Is Mount Everest in the Himalayas? That'd be pretty stupid. I meant between any two large mountains, put it that way. I mean, there is an excuse for every aspect of this. When you start talking about solstices, why does the weather change? Why does the sun angle change through the seasons? How can these seasons happen without the sun? How are the tides caused? How does GPS work out at sea? You really just get this wide, crazy variety of answers. And it's sad because not even a lot... I guess it's kind of like the churches, and even people who believe the same thing in churches don't necessarily believe it the same way. And that churches will argue about which of their religions is correct, when in fact, really they believe more similar than they disagree. But flat earthers, they argue. Even the flat earth community today is saying that the Flat Earth Society is a CIA or government operation to discredit the flat earth movement. But they don't understand this. It was the internet that caused this. It's not... the flat earthers have been building through the internet, not through any new evidence or... because it's a historical thing that people just know. So I understand the desire to want to know better than other people. Even the idea of an eclipse. Some people have said that there's an anti-moon that goes in front of the sun during a solar eclipse. I mean, but you can't see it. Some invisible force. How do you even address these issues in a rational manner with people when they just make up anything to fit the story? They even took a gyroscope. And the Flat Earth group, they bought this. They had one of them bought like a $20,000 gyroscope, which was supposed to prove that the Earth doesn't have this 15-degree, change over time. And their conclusions showed that they were wrong, but they continued to do the test until they found something that worked. It's confirmation bias to the extreme. This is just one example of many. So what I'd like to say about it is, suspect everything. Always question everything you hear, of course. And is there shit NASA's lied about and various, government agencies? Absolutely. Are a lot of the Earth, photos that they've shown, are a lot of them actually composite images or, renderings, not the actual planet? Yes. Because the Earth is huge. Most of the satellites, which you can see clearly flying overhead, and right after sunset you can see them reflect the sun, brighter than anything that small in the sky can make by itself, you know that these satellites aren't very far away, and therefore you're not going to get a full picture of the Earth. So what I would pose, for any flat earther out there who may feel slighted by me even mentioning it, you may be correct that a lot of the Earth photos are renderings or examples or sketches, that they're not actually pictures. But there are pictures from the moon that do exist. No matter which angle you look at the Earth from, you can assume that it's flat. So there's no way to really prove that it's not. What I would like the flat Earth community to do is, if they're that strong and they have that much, clout behind them, is to fly a rocket into space, get a satellite up there so they can see that, to prove and send back a picture of even just the side of the disk, even just an angle that shows that it possibly could be a disk. Because everything I've ever seen, whether it's a real picture or a rendering, leads me to believe that the Earth is a globe. It's common sense. Every other planet is. But once again, it's kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the idea that everything's a simulation. It's the same exact thing. It doesn't answer a single question. If we're really on a disk shooting up through space at a certain speed, what's beyond that? What's past that? What's outside of this whole disk, So that's about all I'm going to say on the flat Earth thing. I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way because it's something that I'd been thinking about, and after watching that documentary, I figured I had to speak my mind on it. I get several comments asking me, do you believe in the flat Earth? Do you believe in the flat Earth? And the responses I get when I give a long thought out comment is, oh, well, you just got to educate yourself more. Do more research. I'd like to say the same thing in response. Do more research. If I find out that the Earth is flat, or is a frisbee, or is some flipping coin, I will be absolutely all for it. I say, that's awesome, amazing. But nothing else in the universe appears to work that way. You can look through a deep field telescope. You can go down and look through a telescope at the moon. If you understand how optics work, you would know that if the moon was really as close as they claim it is, you wouldn't get the detail that you're getting. So, to each his own. I guess you can only go by the information we have. And the same with space and the whole Neil deGrasse Tyson thing, the opposite end of the spectrum. There's people in the flat Earth community who believe that everybody who believes in space is completely deluded, and that they're all part of the conspiracy. If you even dare to speak in support of the idea that rockets maybe actually go to space, you're a shill, you're a government agent, and some of the things that these people call, most of the people who believe in this, a lot of the ones I've talked to, they're the same ones who will start talking about GMOs and how you shouldn't vaccinate your kids. And they start spreading all these different bullshit conspiracies. And I've been on the fence for years about all these issues. I've done my own research. And I can only go by what's in here, what I've learned. So, does it really matter to me if I'm wrong? Well, in a lot of cases, yes. Because if I make a mistake that harms me or my kids or my family, then, that's important. That's dangerous. So I do my best to educate myself on things. Well, the issue with vaccines, for example, is an important issue. But something with flat Earth, it doesn't really matter what shape you think the Earth is. But it does when you start confusing kids in school, or if teachers start suggesting the Earth is flat, or parents start teaching their kids that, there's a grand Illuminati conspiracy to turn them all into reptilians. The Alex Jones type bullshit. And I know Alex Jones type bullshit all too well. I followed that guy, not followed him, but watched him since like 98, when I read Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, who was another fanatic who had some great stories, but a lot of bullshit too. I understand delusional disorders now. I understand a little bit better about psychosis as well as schizophrenia. Looking back, I see that a lot of these people were deluded, and I believe a lot of the prophets of the past were deluded as well. A lot of the people claiming to be messiahs or teachers or healers were probably deluded. A lot of the psychics out there are probably deluded. So my idea is to get to the bottom of things, not for the sake of saying you're wrong, but for the sake of saving everybody the trouble of wasting their money and time on completely bullshit theories, ideas, and claims and alternative medicine that don't work. So I'm stuck on the fence between, I support alternative medicine. I'm an herbalist. I'm totally, I hate big pharma and the way they abuse, the privilege of people's health, of having, the power over that. But at the same time, I see a lot of people doing good. And I generally have a good view of people, a generally positive view of humanity. And maybe that's what it comes down to a lot of the time. Because if we're suspicious of all of our fellow man, and we think our neighbors are out to get us, and everybody wants to put us in prison or kill us, or, that anybody who talks bad is going to be suicided or, killed off, there's a lot of that goes on. But if we focus on that, we're losing our time and we're wasting our lives. The conspiracy realm never brought me anything but negativity. If you're going against the grain of the mainstream, it can feel good. It can feel like you know something that others don't. But in the end, when you're faced with actual claims and evidence, and the burden of proof is on you, it's just a waste of energy. So my intention is not to laugh at people who believe in conspiracies, but rather to have a dialogue. Because I know a lot of people who fall into that realm are lonely, have unhappy lives perhaps that lead them to want to find a community or a group that supports them. And when you say that, a lot of people get offended. Because they say, oh yeah, you just think it's a psychological issue. It usually is. You don't see happy, happy, satisfied, productive people out there who are ranting and raving on the street corner about, the end times. It's just, it's unfortunate that we can go down that road, but we can pull each other out of it. As long as there's somebody screaming on the street corner that the world's going to end, there will be somebody there to sit there enamored by them and follow them and follow their footsteps. And this is how we end up with cult leaders and plastic shamans and guru frauds, Jonestown Massacre, things like that. It's very a fine line to walk between listening to somebody who's an expert or a teacher and getting sucked into somebody else's illusion or delusion. So for me, it's kind of a passive observation, but at the same time, I want to be active in, expressing my own opinions on the issue. So I'm going to go now, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, enjoyed something from it. If you're a flat earther out there, all I can say is take the mountain challenge. Shine a light between the, Everest and the next tallest mountain. We'll be waiting for the results. I will hope that you all are doing well in your day, your evening, your morning, as I said. And thanks for watching. Don't know what else to say. Take care.